Hi folks, my name's Tom. You're watching High Rant District. I wanted to talk today about a piece of gear, a piece of stereo equipment. One thing I don't think we do enough of in the vinyl community is talk about the gear we use to listen to our music. I don't care if you have a bazillion-dollar system. I don't care if you're playing on a suitcase record player. It's just kind of fun to see people's gear and to see what they're spinning things on. I'm never going to be that person that says, oh yeah, you should get your speakers off that surface because your turntable's on it. You do what you want to do. It's your gear. So today, anyway, instead of talking about the main rig, I want to talk about a turntable I picked up for the office, home office. It feels a little bit indulgent to me to have a second turntable, but here we are. Okay, so this turntable is an Acoustic Research AR XA. It's probably from the mid to late 1960s. I'm driving it with, this is for a home office, so I don't use speakers, and sort of my backup phono system is what I use here. I've got the black item is the Shit Manny. It's a headphone amp, so I use a pair of headphones. It's a pair of Sennheiser HD6XX headphones that I use. And then the bottom item is a Shit Manny, which is a phono preamp. So the silver item, the phono preamp, is plugged into the headphone amp, and I plug headphones into the headphone amp, and that's how I listen in the home office. So let's talk about the AR XA. This particular turntable is a modified turntable. It's had a few things done to it, and I'll talk about that. But the turntable itself came out in, I don't know, the 1960s or so. It was marketed as an audiophile turntable at the time. I'm used to a turntable that minimizes vibrations, unwanted vibrations, I should say, by having a heavy plinth. So there's different ways of minimizing unwanted vibrations in a turntable. You could have a very heavy plinth. You use mass, so the weight of the plinth, can help to dampen any vibrations from making, your playback sound odd. Another way you could do it is the way Rega, R-E-G-A, does it. They use very minimal plinths, but they're very rigid. Their philosophy is to have like an extremely rigid, stiff, I'm not trying to sound pornographic here, but they use a very rigid plinth that's very minimalist. It's not a whole lot of weight to it, and that keeps it from transmitting unwanted vibration into what you're hearing. Then you have what's called a suspended, I guess you would call it a suspended platter. Let me show you what I mean. I'm used to seeing a very, rigid bass and a rigid setup. I'm not used to seeing this. A bouncy platter. Essentially what this is the thing has a suspension that decouples it from the plinth. There's videos online where somebody will place a piece of wood right on the top of the plinth and hammer a nail into it while a record's playing and it doesn't skip. And you can be doing this all day and the record will not skip. It will not transmit to there. Let's break this down a little bit. This, if I just take off this mat. The platter itself is two pieces. You have this outer ring, which just lifts straight off. And then the sub platter, this is the thing that turns the record. So you've got a little motor back there with the belt. And, there's two different rings on the motor. The top little ring is what you use for 33 1/3 RPM, and then the bottom one, you just shift the belt to play 45. Oh, and other modifications on this particular table. This table comes with the RCA cables and the ground wire soldered together. It's, it just comes from the underneath of the table, and the power cord is directly connected. This is a modified turntable where, let's turn this around a bit. A separate main socket has been connected so that you can have a detachable power cord and also the RCA cables have been separated. It's been modded to have RCA inputs in there, and the ground is, this thing is now internally grounded. So if I take the belt off and just lift the platter out, you can kind of get an idea of the suspension. Now there's springs underneath where you can adjust this platter, and you can see by the virtue of the arm is shaking, the arm itself, the tone arm, is connected to the sub platter. So when something happens that's hitting the top of this plinth or the side, these springs will adjust and not transmit the resonance to either the tone arm or the platter. And this tone arm, man, this tone arm is something else too. That head shell is a third-party head shell. Sort of attaches just like same type of attachment as a Technics, where the cartridge is attached to the head shell, and the head shell connects. Now it's got a kind of a weird mount there. It's not a normal Technics head shell by any means. And the thing that was weird about this, I had to replace this head shell. There's a place on eBay that I think 3D print these head shells. So that the thing you have to consider about this head shell is that if you break the leads, like if these wires, these 4 wires that attach to the cartridge, they're not detachable. They're really soldered into as part of the head shell. So the original one that I had for this, which was probably very original, was just kind of corroded and the wires broke. So instead of, I don't have a soldering kit anymore. Instead of picking up a soldering kit, I just got a new head shell that's, well regarded. And this cartridge on here is a Audio Technica VM740 ml. And, in no uncertain terms, this is probably overkill for this table. So this table in the wild, if you find this turntable out in the wild, it's probably going to be, I don't know, $150, $200. It's not expensive by any means. It's very lightweight. I don't think it's very well regarded. It's never gotten the props it probably should have as a audiophile-ish turntable. And let me get back to the to the tone arm. I just find the suspension super neat, and this tone arm, I'm used to tone arms being pretty fixed, and then it's what the fuck is that even? The thing just kind of lifts out. So it's super light. And just kind of, this thing, it's got there's a little ball bearing down in that hole, just kind of drops straight in. And that's how it sits. It's the weight's all wrong without the head shell on it. But just a very manual turntable, just the counterweight. I've dialed this in, I do set up my cartridges as best as I can. Using a protractor, it's not a perfect setup. You just can't get, I think, the overhang exactly right. The distance that from the center of the pivot point of the tone arm to where the stylus is ultimately. You can't get that perfect, but it doesn't. This turntable does not seem to need to be perfect. This thing sounds amazing. I want to show you the nothingness that is this table. I want to show you how it looks underneath. All right, I've unscrewed the bottom piece just to show you kind of what's inside this turntable. I'll lean it there. It's a whole lot of nothing. So you just have this T-bar. This is right here is where the tone arm is sitting, and then here's the center for the sub platter, and then you just kind of adjust the screws on this thing, on these springs, to set the suspension correctly. So somebody else before I got this had replaced the tone arm wire. So the tone arm wire is just really right there, and they've grounded this thing, and somebody else put in the RCA connectors right here. You know, it's a connect right there. Somebody, this is the motor, and that motor, let's see, somebody changed, put in a main socket here instead of having the, so you can just externally put in a separate plug. And really, that's it. There's not a whole lot to this table. The nice thing about having a separate mains plug, a separate power plug that you can just plug in and unplug, is that the turntable itself is never turned off. There's not an on and off switch that turns off the motor. The motor itself just kind of is always on, and like if you touch your finger to it, to the motor itself, if I had this thing flipped back up, you can feel that it's running. It's just not spinning anything, if you don't turn the switch, the switch here on and off. It's just turning the motor. If it's making the motor spin or not spin, it's not actually turning this off. So this you would be able to have some vibration, if you leave it plugged in. So if you have a table like this, just so the motor's not forever running when you're not using it, it's helpful to either plug it into a power strip that you can turn off the power strip. So basically you can kill the power to the table, or, by having the separate mains plug, you just do what I do and just unplug the wire. So there you go. Just a very simple deck that sounds fantastic to me. Again, the cartridge I use, the ATVM 730 ml, probably overkill for this table, but everything works together and everything just sounds great. Here we have a Flock of Haircuts from 1982, their debut album. So when you're playing a record, and ideally you have headphones plugged in so you can listen to the fucking thing. Basically you're just turning the switch on. It does take probably like 8 or 10 seconds for the thing to get up to speed, and then it's all manual. You just kind of lift up the tone arm, and just lay it down. This tone arm is just super light, but it was easy enough to balance and to set up the cartridge and set up the tracking, the tracking weight. I highly recommend this table. If you just need a spare turntable, if you needed this to be your main one, you can find it in working condition, grab it. I mean, I think the thing is just it's a great for me turntable. If I'm keeping a second turntable, I'm keeping this thing. It feels like a little bit of overkill because it's home office. I can play digital files. CDs that I've ripped, I can just listen to them and plug in the headphones that way. So maybe a bit much. Anyway, there you go. The Acoustic Research AR XA turntable. Super cheap if you can find it generally, and works like a charm. Happy to see what gear you're using if you feel like showing it. If not, have fun listening to your music. Oh, one last thing. This is for the Groove Seeker if you happen to be watching. Chris, you made a comment about the poster in the background on the last video I did. It's right above the turntable. It's a Spike Lee Crooklyn poster. And if you see, let's see, right there, that is Spike Lee's autograph right below the Crooklyn logo. I got that because I crowdfunded, helped crowdfund a movie of his. I think I paid for coffee for several people by the amount that I donated, but hey, I got a poster out of it. Great movie, great director. Spike Lee joint. Anyway, catch you later.